In our headlines on this Monday afternoon, September 30th, here in South Korea. Factory output rebounds 1.2% on month in August, while facility investment retreats 5.4% and retail sales rises 1.7% on the back of greater sales of food, beverages and passenger cars. The presence of self-employed workers here in Korea shrinks to 19.7% during the first 8 months of this year, plunging below 20% of the total workforce for the first time since data collection began. Israel launches an airstrike in central Beirut for the first time since the start of its latest confrontation with Hezbollah, even as it opens up a third front of warfare targeting Houthi-controlled parts of Yemen. Findings for the month of August show a rebound in factory output and a substantial rise in retail sales, while facility investment loses ground. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun covers the latest data.
South Korea's industrial production rose for the first time in 4 months, reflecting a rise in consumption and booming auto and semiconductor industries. According to data from Statistics Korea on Monday, industrial production increased by 1.2% in August compared to the month before. This marks a turnaround after 3 consecutive months of decline, with falls seen in May, June and July. The rebound was primarily driven by a 4.1% increase in manufacturing output, while production in sectors such as telecommunications and broadcasting equipment declined by more than 7%. The automotive sector saw a significant 22.7% increase, and semiconductors rose by 6%. The reason behind the large jump in auto production has been attributed to the base effect of low production the month before.
Auto production in July was low due to labor strikes on auto parts companies and facility construction. The surge was high due to the resulting large base effect.
The service sector also continued its upward trend, expanding 0.2% month-on-month for the 3rd consecutive month. Notably, industries closely linked to domestic demand such as accommodation and food services and wholesale and retail trade showed a marked increase. Retail sales, a key indicator of consumer spending, jumped 1.7%, marking the highest growth rate since February 2023. This follows a volatile pattern of decline in April and May, a rebound in June and another dip in July. While sales of semi-durable goods like shoes and bags decreased by 0.9%, non-durable goods such as food and beverages and durable goods like passenger cars saw increases of 2.7% and 1.2% respectively. However, the data also revealed a slowdown in investment. Facility investment declined by 5.4% month-on-month, primarily due to decreases in investment in transportation equipment and machinery. Construction activities also contracted by 1.2%. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
The presence of self-employed workers here in Korea has shrunk to below 20% of the total workforce for the first time since data collection began. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin has details.
The share of self-employed individuals in South Korea's workforce has fallen below the 20% level for the first time. According to Statistics Korea on Monday, based on monthly average figures from January to August this year, there were 5.6 million self-employed individuals. That's 19.7% of the total employed population, the first time that figure has dropped below 20% since related data was first collected in 1963. And these figures are unlikely to see much change with only a couple of months left in the year. The share of self-employed individuals has been seeing a downward trend since first recording 37.2% in 1963, and then falling below the 30% mark in 1989, and narrowly avoiding falling below 20% last year. This has led to the share of non-wage workers, which includes self-employed and people working their family business, falling to a record low of 22.8% this year, nearly one-third of the 68.5% recorded in 1963. The proportion of people working in their family business came to 3.1% out of the total employed this year. But the share of non-wage workers still remains relatively high compared to the rest of the OECD. Out of the 30 OECD nations, South Korea came in at 5th last year, behind Colombia, Mexico, Chile, and Costa Rica. The share of wage workers, on the other hand, came to 77.2%, a significant increase from the 31.5% in 1963. 이수진, Arirang News.
The cabinet has called for a presidential veto of 3 bills passed unilaterally by opposition lawmakers at the parliament. They include 2 bills for special probes, one into the death of a Marine during last year's flood rescue operations, and another into alleged stock manipulation by First Lady Kim Gon-hee. Both bills have been vetoed before. The third bill seeks cash handouts for all Koreans. Speaking at a cabinet meeting on this Monday, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo spoke against the handout bill, calling the move a legislative violation of the executive branch's authority over budget. In other news, South Korea and Slovakia have upgraded their bilateral relations to a strategic partnership, agreeing to bolster cooperation on security, trade, science and culture. Intentions to this end were shared on this Monday during a summit between President Yoon-Xi and Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico at the Yongsan Presidential Office. Addressing matters of mutual interest, the two leaders also oversaw the inking of deals to promote partnership in investment and more. With this latest event, South Korea now holds strategic partnerships with all 4 Visegrad Group countries, including the Czech Republic, Poland, and Hungary as well. The foreign ministers of South Korea and China sat down on the sidelines of the annual UN gathering in New York this past weekend and raised prospects of a summit between their leaders on the margins of the APEC meeting in Peru in November. Our foreign affairs correspondent Yoon-Xi reports.
South Korea's Cho Tae-yeol and his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi have met again for the first time in 2 months. At their meeting in New York on Saturday local time, on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, they agreed to hold high-level exchanges at the APEC summit in Peru in November, right after the U.S. presidential election. The 2 countries' presidents typically attend the annual APEC summit, meaning that South Korean President Yoon-Suk-yeol and Chinese President Xi Jinping could sit down for a bilateral meeting later this year in Peru. During the meeting, Cho said he hopes Saturday's talks could become an opportunity for the 2 countries to reaffirm their commitment to maintain a positive momentum of high-level exchanges, including during the APEC summit this year. In response, Wang also expressed his full support for South Korea's hosting of the APEC summit next year in Gyeongju City. Eyes are on whether Xi will visit South Korea to attend the event, as he last visited Seoul more than 10 years ago, in July 2014. Saturday's meeting comes as relations between the 2 countries have improved in recent months, after a trilateral summit between South Korea, China, and Japan was held in Seoul in May, marking a thaw in relations, which have been strained under President Yoon's administration as Seoul drew closer to Washington. Yoon-Xi, Arirang News.
And the Unification Ministry here has described the frequent visits to flood-stricken Pyongan-Bukdo province by North Korea's Kim Jong-un unusual. In a briefing on this Monday morning, the ministry added Kim appears to be placing priority on public sentiment ahead of the upcoming Workers' Party anniversary on October 10th by making his 3rd visit to the region since July. And according to the regime's state-run media, Kim was in the area back on Sunday, urging for a prompt and proficient reconstruction of homes destroyed by the recent floods. Israel's military campaign against the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah has led to an air attack in central Beirut for the first time, even as it opened up a 3rd front of warfare targeting Houthi-controlled parts of Yemen. Our Cho Soo-young has the latest.
An Israeli airstrike hit an apartment building in central Beirut on Monday. In the past week, Israel has frequently targeted Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah in Beirut's southern suburbs, but this is the first airstrike in the target in the city center. Reuters reported that an upper floor of an apartment building in the Kola district of Beirut was hit. French news agency AFP cited a security source saying that the apartment was belonged to Islamist group Jamaat Islamiyah, that the 4 people were killed by the airstrike. Meanwhile, the Israeli military has said it intercepted a missile launched from Yemen targeting Israel on Saturday. The Houthis targeted the Ben Gurion International Airport located in its capital Tel Aviv as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was returning from the US. In response, Israel launched a massive attack in Yemen on Sunday, targeting the Iran-backed militant group. The Israeli strikes killed at least 4 people and injured 29 others. Marking the second such Israeli attack in Yemen in just over 2 months, the Israeli military used dozens of aircraft, including fighter jets. The Israeli military said that the Houthis have been operating under the direction and funding of Iran, undermining regional stability and disrupting global freedom of navigation. Meanwhile, the Israeli military also announced that it has been successful in eliminating key members of the Hezbollah leadership. The military said that its recent airstrike killed 20 Hezbollah members. The head of Lebanon's Hezbollah was killed on Friday, along with his right-hand man. Amid growing fears of an all-out war in the Middle East, U.S. President Joe Biden said he would speak with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Biden says he believes an all-out war in the region must be avoided, but did not say when he plans to meet with the Israeli leader. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
In related news, Pope Francis has condemned the rampant assaults in Gaza and Lebanon, calling them immoral. The remarks were made in response to questions on flight back home from Belgium by members of the media about Israel's targeting of key Hezbollah figures in Lebanon. While refraining from mentioning Israel by name and claiming he was speaking generally, the Pope suggested that Israel's defense campaign may not be in proportion to its attacks. He also reiterated calls for a ceasefire in the armed confrontations in the Middle East. Over in the U.S., relief and rescue efforts are underway in states across the country's southeast in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, which some authorities claim has left behind, quote, biblical devastation. Our Yoon-Xi reports.
At least 90 people have died and extensive devastation has been caused by and in the wake of Category 4 Hurricane Helene, the strongest hurricane on record to make landfall in Florida's Big Bend. Helene hit the southeastern U.S. on Thursday evening local time with wind speeds of 225 kilometers per hour. It quickly blew through Georgia, leaving the state in a condition described by the state's governor as looking like a bomb went off. It also moved through the Carolinas and Tennessee, where its wind speed weakened but soaked the states with torrential rain, causing massive flooding. Fatalities were reported across 6 states as of Sunday. According to county and state officials, North Carolina reported at least 36 people dead and at least 25 in South Carolina, including 2 firefighters. At least 17 died in Georgia, at least 11 in Florida, 2 in Virginia, and 2 in Tennessee. The hurricane cut power to some 2.4 million people across several states and also caused widespread communication outages. Scores of missing person reports have been filed, around 600 in Buncombe County of North Carolina alone. While the death toll is expected to rise in the affected states, former FEMA Administrator Craig Fugate said that issues with communications infrastructure mean there is hope that the worst has not happened to those who can't be reached. The U.S. Transportation Department said Sunday that hundreds of roads would remain closed in the Carolinas. On the same day, an Energy Department spokesperson said there is no estimated time frame for the restoration of power in the impacted areas. People are also facing frustration from disrupted fuel supplies with hours-long lines to fill up empty tanks, while supply shortages are being reported from some gas stations.
We've been sitting in lines since 6 o'clock this morning, and it was 9:30 that I checked whenever she asked me what time we were getting gas, and so it's been a struggle because even earlier we had somebody sitting in line blocking our fuel truck, and all we were trying to do was get him to move out of the way so we could get our fuel and get more people the gas so everybody else can either get traveling where they need to be or just out and about so we can have fuel for ourselves, because we're not going to have power for about 2 weeks for some people.
With the search for survivors ongoing, President Joe Biden declared federal emergencies in the 6 states, as he called the devastation overwhelming. The scale of the destruction caused by Hurricane Helene will become clearer in the coming days. But so far, between $95 billion and $110 billion worth of damage has been reported. Yoon-Xi, Arirang News.
Back here on the local front, Korea recently hosted the world's first Webtoon Festival and related awards ceremony. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin was there.
Korean culture has long been defined by K-pop and K-dramas, but now a new star is in the spotlight, Webtoons. The latest data from South Korea's Culture Ministry shows the country's webtoon and cartoon industry was valued at $1.9 billion. That's up 23% from the previous year. And for the first time, exports have exceeded $100 million. So what's driving this global popularity?
They're designed for mobile devices, so you can read them anywhere, anytime. The vertical format fits perfectly on smartphones, and the stories are fast-paced and trendy with each episode offering a complete storyline.
So as a Webtoon powerhouse, South Korea is the host of this year's the first ever World Webtoon Festival. So here, fans can try out and start off their experience by taking a picture with their favorite characters.
From pop-up stores to exhibitions dedicated to popular webtoons, there's plenty to explore. But beyond the fanfare, this festival represents something much bigger for the industry.
Events like this help webtoons become more mainstream. It takes a lot of resources, and we need more public interest to keep it going. I believe as webtoon culture continues to grow, so will support and participation.
This festival isn't just about celebrating the latest hits. It also pays tribute to the history of Korean webtoons. Yeolgangu, or Ruler of the Land, a beloved classic in Korean comics, is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year.
Today's generation is used to scrolling through webtoons rather than flipping through comic books. So since March, we've been releasing a remastered version on Naver Webtoon. It's a great way for new fans to discover our series.
Cutting-edge technology like this AI-powered robot capable of drawing cartoons in real time shows how the industry continues to evolve. The festival also introduced the first ever World Webtoon Awards, honoring 10 outstanding webtoons from around the world.
When the Academy Awards first started, it was just a 15-minute ceremony. Now, it's one of the most iconic events in film. We hope the World Webtoon Awards can achieve the same success, and we will provide full support to make it happen.
With plans to make this an annual event, South Korea aims to expand its webtoon and cartoon market to over $3 billion in value and increase exports to $250 million by 2027. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. Republican presidential nominee and former U.S. President Donald Trump stepped up his personal attacks on his Democratic rival Kamala Harris, saying at a rally in Pennsylvania that she was born mentally impaired and should be impeached and prosecuted.
Crooked Joe Biden became mentally impaired, sad. But lying Kamala Harris, honestly, I believe she was born that way. There's something wrong with Kamala, and I just don't know what it is, but there is definitely something missing. And you know what? Everybody knows it.
With just over 1 month left until the November presidential election, Trump intensified his personal offensive attacks at his rally in Erie, Pennsylvania on Saturday, while some senior Republicans distanced themselves from his comments. South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham said on CNN that, quote, "I just think the better course to take is to prosecute the case that our policies are destroying the country." Donald Trump has previously made personal attacks at Kamala Harris, calling the Democratic candidate stupid, weak, dumb as a rock, and lazy. Schools in Nepal shut down for 3 days on Sunday after landslides and floods triggered by heavy rain across the country reportedly killed at least 151 people, while 56 remain missing. Up to 322.2 millimeters of rain fell beginning early on Friday, raising the nation's main Bagmati River 2.2 meters above its danger mark. Downpours in the valley around Nepal's capital, Kathmandu, brought the city of 4 million to a standstill, with residents jumping across rooftops to escape the threatening water levels, from which some 3,600 people have already been rescued. According to Nepal state media, 10,000 police officers, volunteers and army personnel were mobilized for the search and rescue efforts. Despite signs of easing, more rain is forecast until Tuesday. New Zealand has reclaimed the world record for the largest mass haka after over 6,000 people performed the war dance together at a rugby stadium. Haka was made famous by New Zealand's All Blacks rugby team, who perform it immediately before their matches. A total of 6,531 Kiwis joined to perform the Kamate Haka at the Eden Park Rugby Stadium in Auckland, with men, women and children all completing the vigorous traditional dance. A Guinness World Records adjudicator confirmed the number of participants and announced the previous world record held by France since 2014, with 4,028 participants, had been broken. Auckland organisers said they had hoped for up to 10,000 participants, but were pleased regardless to set the new world record. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The last day of September is wrapping up with a summer-like afternoon with a big rise in highs from the breezy morning. 대관령 in Gangwon-do even had single-digit morning temperatures, so please beware of big gaps in readings and do dress accordingly today. Afternoon temperatures should be 3 to 5 degrees higher than season norms, topping out at 28 degrees Celsius in most parts of Korea this afternoon. Sunny skies are expected with decent air quality all day today. Then tomorrow, Armed Forces Day, we're expecting light showers in many regions, which will bring an autumn chill to the country. And Seoul is forecast to wake up to a low of 11 degrees on Wednesday morning. Meanwhile, Typhoon Krathon is traveling along Taiwan's south coast. It could shift course towards South Korea, which could impact Korea later in the week. And as we have frequent holidays this week, please keep an eye on the latest weather forecast. Well, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour. Thank you for watching.